Hello, TechCrunch. We're still here at TechCrunch Moscow 2013, and this time we are with Noam Canetti, partner at Ernst & Young, head of technology practice in Israel. Correct?
Exactly.
And also the head of the joint venture between
Ernst & Young in Israel and Ernst & Young in Russia. We've collaborated a year ago to bring the experience that we have working with startup companies from very early stages until they become mature. And we've brought this experience working into the Russian market.
So do you think there's a lot we in Russia can learn from the Israeli technology market?
I think so. I think that Israel has a very developed startup scene. It's been now 25 years or so. It started in the beginning of the 90s or late 80s. Most of the money comes mostly from the US, from US investors. And it's fairly developed around different type of spaces and segments within the technology. But Israel is a very small country.
Yeah.
So all of the technologies are being exported outside of Israel. I think that what we've seen is that the technology scene here in Russia is booming, and we want to bring the experience of working with these startups and providing them different type of services that they need throughout the journeys to become mature.
That was recently in the news that the Sochi 2014 organizing committee bought snowmaking machines from Israel.
Well,
Why do you need
sounds
snow
very
in Israel?
interesting. We don't.
So that's why you sell them to Russia.
One mountain that has some snow I would say. This is definitely not Austria or France.
Oh, so that's why you need machines to make more snow.
Exactly. So we need to focus on machines.
That makes sense. In Startup Nation, that famous book about Israeli entrepreneurial scene, one of the features of Israel that made it special for entrepreneurs that is mentioned is the Israeli army, which, as the authors of the book claim, played a huge role in making Israeli tech entrepreneurs so successful.
Correct. I think the key issue for Israel is, first of all, because we really don't have a domestic market, so we had to focus on products that you can on innovation. And on product, and we don't really have too many natural resources, unfortunately. No gas or anything like that, or it's actually very limited.
You found some gas.
Yes, it's fairly limited if you compare it to other places in the world. But the idea is that we had to focus on innovation, and what we've done is that there were some things that really drove the success. So one of the things is, of course, the army. We have a small army, so it has to be a very smart one. So most of the investment is in knowledge. People go to the army at the age of 18. They spend 3 years for men, 2 years for women. And so a lot of this time is being spent on learning technologies that would be cutting-edge technologies. These technologies are later on being transformed into the civil world. By the way, the other key driver in Israel that really helped us is the major immigration that came from Russia.
Right.
This immigration brought to Israel at the beginning of the 90s over 1 million people. It's actually, I would say, 20% of the population in Israel currently is people that actually came from Russia. And if you go through the corridors of an Israeli typical R&D center, I would say it's close to 40%.
And they all speak Russian.
Yes, yeah, it's quite interesting. And that's really helped us boost, because many of these people that came from Russia came with engineering backgrounds, and that really helped us.
Right, and so the corridor that you're trying to build between Israel and Russia, is it one directional or bidirectional? But what you've already mentioned is that Israeli companies interested in going to the Russian market. Do you see companies going the other way around?
So yes, I think it's both directions. So one, for some Israeli companies, of course, is they would want to address and go to the Russian market because the market is very big. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that most of the global venture capitals have branches in Israel. I would say like Sequoia and Battery and Bessemer and Lightspeed and Greylock and others have operations in Israel. And currently, most of our investments are in Israel, much more, by the way, than anywhere else in Europe.
Wow.
And so for all of them, looking into Russia, it sounds very interesting. Just a couple of months ago, we've done a major conference in Israel that we call The Journey. At the evening of that conference, we brought, we made a unique conference that's called The Journey into Russia. So we brought 12 VCs from Russia, including Guruna Capital, Almaz, Intel, and others, and over 10 CEOs of large companies, including Yandex and others. And we actually had them to meet in a summit, if you like, with Israeli VCs, not only the Israeli ones, but also all the global VCs that have branches in Israel and other guests of our conference, to specifically discuss needs of Russia. And the question was, how do we bring these global investors that have operations in Israel and have the mandate to invest in Russia, how do we bring them into Russia? I think that what we've heard from all of them is the same thing that we've heard in Israel at the beginning of the 90s. For all of them, it would be a concern to invest directly in a Russian company, being an emerging country for technology purposes. So they were uncertain how the business environment looks like. But for all of them, they would look for the trusted access point, the way to get into Russia. And that trusted access point would be the local venture capital industry. So if they feel comfortable with the local VCs, it would be easier for them to invest in Russian companies, doing a co-investment with those VCs.
So that they know that VCs speak the same language and can invite founders for dinner.
Exactly. If they feel that these people think, these VCs think the same way they think, appreciate the same type of issues, and they can feel comfortable that the VC, the Russian VC on the ground, that can really see the entrepreneur, understand the way business is done, tells them, or feel comfortable that this company is being managed appropriately, if that would be the case, they would feel more comfortable putting their own money in.
Right. And speaking about this corridor, do you think we can expect a delegation of Israeli startups next year here at TechCrunch?
Yes, clearly. By the way, we've brought a delegation of Russian VCs to Russian startups into our conference, so not only VCs, but we brought over 20 companies from Russia into our conference in Israel to meet with venture capitals and so on. And one of the things that we want to do for next year also here in TechCrunch is to bring few of the, let's say, most successful entrepreneurs in Israel to talk here and discuss their own experiences, and also bring startups here to come.
I actually think that right here on the alley we have at least one startup that I can think of which has offices in Israel.
Exactly. The name is G-Booking.
Yeah, G-Booking, and I think there's actually more. There is also Tag and Find, which is somehow linked. I think they also have offices in Israel or R&D in Israel.
Well, I can tell you that I started coming here. I'm coming here on a monthly basis. I started coming last year, and honestly, I was amazed how strong the connection is in this corridor between the two countries. And again, as I said before, it's over 20%, definitely in this industry, that are Russian immigrants. So people have family, people have friends. There's a lot of connections between the two countries, so it's kind of natural.
And one last question, I'm asking it in the end so we can cut it out of the video just in case, is a lot of people don't understand what is the role of big four companies in this whole innovation process. I mean, you're consulting, big businesses pay you big money to get your services.
Exactly, I'll explain. We talked about, the need of companies here in Russia to go global. We discussed it just at the panel that I was part in. And if Russian companies would want to go global and look for global venture capital money, and later on potentially being sold or go public in global markets, they would need the touch of trust so that foreign investor would feel comfortable knowing that things are being done appropriately in the same way that are being done anywhere else in the world. And currently, there is some perception among global investors that the business environment in Russia, like other emerging markets, is probably not as the same one as in the US or the UK or anywhere else. The big four really provide this type of trust. That's the idea. It's the same thing as going to a restaurant in a chain that you already know when you come to a country that you don't know about. You trust the fact that you see a brand and you feel comfortable with it. They all know that Ernst & Young anywhere else in the world would follow the same procedure and would ensure that you can trust the information that you're looking at.
But isn't it a bit too expensive for startups?
Well, it's a very good question. I think that what we want to do here The same thing as we've done in Israel is to ensure that we have lighter products, if you like, lighter type of services that can really work on startups and would really help them build things in the right way, but still pay the right fees. I think for us, it's really an investment in the, in the industry here. We really believe in that. We really believe, I personally believe, that the market here would really succeed, or the industry here would really succeed. And I think that for us, the way we look at it is that if we will invest by cutting fees and go with lower fees at an earlier stage, but in the right entrepreneurs. By the way, it's not about the company, it's about the entrepreneur, because one company might fail, but the second company might be better. And so if we invest in the right entrepreneurs, we will all ultimately succeed. And that's what happened to us in Israel. By the way, in Israel, we work with 70% of the market. We Ernst Young.
That's pretty impressive.
Exactly. And it started because we really betted on this market. And the idea was, if we work with the right entrepreneurs and do good, things will work well.
Right, so I'm taking your word for it, so we'll see more Israeli startups here at TechCrunch in 2014.
You will.
Thank you a lot. See you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
TechCrunch.